top tier machine learning vendors and other analytics vendors. He's the point person for all of the ISV ecosystem, pretty much. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'll try to see if tell me if without the mic it's okay. Because normally I speak pretty loudly, but if it's okay, right? Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, thanks a lot for having me here, and this is a real honor. I'm Jeremiah. I'm 14 years at Microsoft, 28 years in the industry. Also, I have made a conscious decision to try to get experiences as a technologist across different groups at Microsoft. So for example, I started with Microsoft. I was in engineering, product engineering before Microsoft. I built document imaging and workflow products, both in India, where I was born, and then later on here in the US. But then I consciously made a decision to go into consulting, and I was in consulting for 7.5 years, doing various mission critical engagements as part of the mission critical team at Microsoft. So Intel, Motorola 911, those are kind of engagements I got involved in. And it really opened my eyes beyond engineering to, how do you build solutions that actually have an impact on people's life. And beyond that, I tried to say, okay, but how do you show value before people even come to your product and try to build a solution out of it? And so I spent 5 years in sales as a technologist. 3, I was managing the Intel relationship for Microsoft, and then 2, I went back to India. I was a CTO for the India Enterprise Group. And then I came back, and I've been focused on the ISV side of things, where I work pretty much with most of the Valley ISVs to land them on Azure. And typically the conversation starts with, for example, about a year ago I was at Cloudera, and the conversation started saying, but wait, you're Microsoft, we really don't use anything Microsoft. How are we even relevant to what we do, right? And then from there to what some of the things that I will show you, a strategic relationship where Satya meets with Mike Olson on a pretty regular basis, or he and Scott Guthrie, our EVP for cloud, meet with Billy Bosworth, DataStax CEO. So those are the relationships that we have built, and that's kind of what I want to highlight here about our data platform story. So, any questions before we start? So why I want to put this slide is, first of all, I use very little slides. I do a lot of presentations even at our EBC. I like to show live because it, I think, resonates well. But I want to use 3 slides to kind of set the frame. This is not a Microsoft slide. It says data platform landscape. And as you know, today what's happened with the data platform is, there was a time when you just had relational, and any problem space you try to ultimately at the data tier map to a relational engine. And obviously that doesn't work. That doesn't work for many scenarios, because now you need some very specialized engines. So as you can see, especially coming out of the valley, Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, all of them were facing types of problems which nobody else did, especially with the line of business applications. So all of a sudden the data space became this complicated, and I'm not going to go into detail because I'm sure most of you know this, but this is what, just like we have the classification of species, I look at this as the classification of the data platform, right? There's the relational and non-relational, and then there is new SQL, which is scale out SQL interface, 99.9% compatible with MySQL, those sorts of things. And then there is the whole NoSQL space here, and within that there is the table type of things. There's the graph, right? So in general, why I wanted to show this slide is, when customers come in, we can say, oh wait, I just offer one type of NoSQL engine, or I offer one type of a cache, or I offer one type of a graph database. Typically what ends up happening is, this is what today's application or solution looks like. It's called polyglot persistence, and what it means is, I typically have some sort of a primary database, and again I intentionally use the non-Microsoft slide, right? I use some sort of a primary database. It could be any one of those. Then I have some sort of an analytics platform, right? Batch analytics, data warehouse, then machine learning. Then there is typically a file object store, and then there is specialized data stores. So for example, search, right? Solr, Apache Solr, React, Spring, Redis, RabbitMQ. Yeah, no, not yet. Sorry. So for one example was when McDonald's came to Microsoft and they're building this customer loyalty program, where you can go order online, they can keep track, and all those kind of things, and that for all the global franchises. For that, they had done a lot of benchmarking on the back end, because you can just imagine the scale of having a worldwide system like that. So they had done a lot of benchmarking, and they said that we will go with Cassandra, DataStax Cassandra, as a primary data store. We will use Redis cache for the caching layer, and then RabbitMQ for the queuing. They made the decision. So the question to Microsoft was, do you offer these on Azure, right, as first-class citizens? Because if you don't, we know where to go, and that's an address west of here. So yeah, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but Seattle is actually called, not just because it's cloudy, but it's called the cloud capital of the world, because you got Amazon over there on the Lake Union side. Then across the lake on this side is Microsoft, the number 2 cloud clear, and then Google actually has invested a lot, and most of the App Engine team is based out of Kirkland, which is where I live. So just about 10 minutes from my house. So if Microsoft doesn't have that, they know that Amazon has pretty much everything that I showed there, because the vendors are investing in it, right? So for Microsoft to be successful in the big data space, we have to try to get all these engines to work seamlessly on our platform. And that's part of my big focus is, why do I work with Cloudera? Why do I work with? Because it's a mutually beneficial relationship. For Microsoft, as they say, data has gravity, right? If you got the data, when in any cloud vendor, it will let you get in data for free. Please give me data, right? Please give me terabytes, petabytes, exabytes worth of data. Because data has gravity. Once you got data in your cloud platform, they're not going anywhere. And then you can monetize, and they can monetize on top of it by building different applications. So that's a key aspect of the big data platform in the cloud, is you want people to get in a lot of data, and there is a lot of data being generated, and then you monetize by building something higher up the stack. So again, from Microsoft's perspective, nobody's going to come to Microsoft or Amazon and say, oh wait, I want to store everything in S3, or I want to store everything in a Microsoft Azure storage. There are situations and scenarios like that, but it's these engines that get the data, right? People make a decision on storing something in a cloud, in a Cassandra, storing a time series database like Mapper DB, and having that data that they can later process. So we need to have those engines on Azure, and that's a key strategy. Now the other part of it is, okay, so if you want to give that first-class experience, Microsoft has traditionally been, and I don't know how even in this room how many people know, but if you say, okay, Microsoft Azure Cloud, what does it run? I mean, do we know what type of operating system does it run? What type of application platform does it run? Is it Windows Server? Is it .NET?
Is it Azure?
Yeah, but on Azure, what kind of workloads can you run?
Linux and
Windows. Right? So you have to have Linux and Windows. But when Microsoft started out, we started out with what we call as platform as a service, which was for the massively scalable stateless applications. Did not work, and we saw where Amazon went ahead. So then we kind of morphed that platform as a service to start supporting Linux and Windows workloads. So today, and I will show you, we support different flavors of Linux as well. In 18 months, Microsoft 21% of Azure is running Linux. And our CVP for Azure has made a very clear commitment. All the growth is going to happen in Linux. And for a company like Microsoft to make that sort of you can just see how much of a change the market has forced on us to put all that investment in a completely different operating system that we competed with all these years. And all these workloads, as you know more than I guess I do, they all run on Linux. So given the strategy that we need those engines because that's what customers decide, if we don't have them, they're not going to come to a cloud platform. And if you don't support Linux, none of these will land on Azure. Because nobody's going to port it to Windows. It just doesn't make sense. So we have to put Linux as a first-class citizen on Azure to be able to support all these workloads. Okay. So yeah, just the next slide. Yeah, just build it up. So one of the other things is, we looked that data, independently. But again, there is a life cycle of data in the enterprise, right? And the enterprise is typically where you make a lot of money. They have the LOB applications, but a lot of born in the cloud scenarios are having the data in the enterprise, and then they want to use these engines to process that data. So what you see over here is there are different kinds of event processors, right? And we need to have a story here. So we need to have a first party service and third party services that effectively ingest data at high speed, high accelerated data velocity, right? All of the volume, velocity, the things that you typically associate with big data. We need to have a service that enables that, because trying to ask people to write from scratch, not going to happen. Right? So we have something called Device Hub, and then we also have third-party services that let you do those kind of things. Again, then event queuing systems, right? Kafka, RabbitMQ, ActiveMQ, all of those are supported on Azure. Transformations, so Apache Storm. We have our own first-party HD inside. There are different types of storage adapters. There's Azure ML, right? Azure Machine Learning. And then dashboards, Apache Azure. So as you can see, this is a very different Microsoft, because if you see, these are the kind of services that Microsoft's offering on Azure, then clearly, most of these components are not Microsoft, and they are run on Linux. So it's a pretty fundamental shift in terms of how we are approaching the business, because you cannot be selective. We cannot be selective, otherwise we are irrelevant. So then real quick, I want to switch to another slide, and then we'll go to the dashboard.
That was the last one.
Yeah, the mouse is in. Yeah. Do you have to drag it down? Yes, again, from a big data perspective, you cannot say that, oh, I have, I support Cassandra and Cloudera and that's my big data story, right? So as you can see here, this picture depicts the fact that we have first party for every one of the typical things that you need. There's a data store. Each one of the data stores could be each of those categories that I showed on the first slide, right? NoSQL, NewSQL, for NoSQL, memory-based, or SSD optimized, or storage optimized. So there are different types of engines that are specialized for different types of scenarios. So we have those as well as our first party. So for example, Mongo DB. Mongo DB is offered as a in your own subscription cluster that you manage. MongoDB is offered as a service that is offered by Mongo Labs, which does the managed service, and we have Document DB, which is kind of similar. So it's our own first-party managed service, right? So again, the idea is give the choice, because people don't come when you just say, oh, I got Document DB or I got MongoDB. You need to have all these different flavors. It's in your subscription where you can manage. It's in a managed service. It's a service that Microsoft itself offers. So those are kind of the things I want to talk. One other thing that's also critical is as the data, once you get beyond the different engines and move up the platform, you need to say how does data move between those different stores. And oftentimes the idea is that you bring the compute to the storage, right? You don't move around a whole bunch of data. But then what about hybrid scenarios? And that's one of our differentiators, and I will explain how we are differentiated there. But if you want to move data from on-prem to one of these engines here to Azure storage, you cannot do a one-off connector every time. So we have something called Azure Data Factory. That's this line over here. It's not very visible on this, but Azure Data Factory, that is kind of your workflow engine for data. So you define, this type of source. I want to use Azure Data Factory. You define the process within it, and then it, orchestrates that, provides the governance, auditing, all of those things. And so we have built that platform to essentially understand and manage data. Okay. So now if we can switch over to the to the portal view, the browser. So that slides. Any questions? Yeah.
So what's the difference between hot path and cold path data?
Yeah, sorry, let him. Or I guess I can answer the what happened? No, not this. I want the browser, the Chrome. Sorry, I'll answer that. Let me just quickly. How much time do we have?
We have until 8, but you don't want to go back. Okay, I've got another 35 minutes.
Okay. So,
Sorry, what was the question?
he was asking like, what is hot and cold data? So essentially, let me quickly answer that before we go, because this is kind of the meat of the thing. Effectively, Azure Storage Service, which we will look into when we get in here, that makes 3 copies by default. So when you say that in a particular region, I store in Azure Storage, it's making 3 copies of that data. Data that is used on a more recent basis is kind of called hot data, right? And so let's say within Spark or something that's currently being processed or just recently being processed, that's hot data. And cold data is where it's been a little while and then it starts moving up, because ultimately why that matters is the cost of storage comes into play for any solution. So you cannot say that I have a one size fits all for all of my data, because when you store something in an S3 kind of blob or Azure storage, for example, it's 2.4 retail, 2.4 cents per gigabyte per month. Okay. But then there is the latency and the throughput is also throttled there, because you're paying very cheap for that kind of storage. The moment you start moving that data up onto the compute, that same Azure storage back disk which you attach to the compute, it goes to 5 cents a gigabyte per month, right? So your cost has suddenly doubled. Now, many of these data clusters, they don't take advantage of the fact that Azure is already making 3 copies in the same region and optionally 6 copies by pairing in another region like US West, USA. You get that by default for that 2.4 cents. So you're getting all those copies for such a cheap price. If you start moving out SSD, again your price goes up. So what you have to do is you have to make sure that the hot data is as closest in memory in SSD, and then the cold data is as further away, because the cost of storage is something that always comes into play for you. Okay. So then, yeah, and thanks again. So then this is the face of Azure. This is the portal for Azure. If you see, the first thing is the regions. So these are all live. You can actually click on it, and it takes a very so unlike other, typically when you say cloud, even private or if, some of our competitors, and again we love them. So I'm always respect what our competition has. But over here we have the regions, and Microsoft actually has the largest footprint. It's intentionally called region and not a data center, because every region, like this dot you see here in US West, every region has up to between 2 to 16 data centers. So there's a lot of resiliency built into the region itself. When you click on that, if you can click on like one of those dots, right, you'll see that it will list all the services that are available in that region. Now these are Microsoft services: access control, Active Directory, HD Insight, some of those first party services that I showed you. They'll be running in these regions. There are currently 19 regions, including 2 in China. 2 are going to be lighted up in India. Satya already made the public announcement. So 2 will be lighted up in India later this year. So we'll have a total of 21 regions. So you can just imagine the footprint that we are investing in and how seriously we are taking this business. And I think both Amazon and Google combined probably don't have 21 regions in the whole world. So we are clearly investing a lot in that area. Typically, in a cloud portal, you see virtual machines and storage and compute, but that's not how you operate, right? You operate as a service. You operate saying that here's my particular solution. In the case of Dataguise, them offering security, encryption, masking, they're offering a service. If you say that here's Dataguise and that's 10 virtual machines here and 2 networks defined here, it's very tough. So we have intentionally made a decision to have a service-centric approach, and not just for Microsoft services, but even any service that you build. And I will quickly go into what is the underlying technology that powers that, and how simple it is, and how easy it is to enable those sorts of service-centric approach in this particular platform.
Do these regions then also include the retail or 365?
No,
As well?
no. So this is pure only Azure, the 20 regions. So Office 365 is a completely different project that's currently going on to land the entire Office 365 on Azure.
No, what I meant was.
But today it's completely
so they
different.
don't share any
No.
of those standards, okay.
It's complete. This is only Azure regions. The one that's not shown here, there's quite a few that are not shown here. The 2 in China, because they are behind the Great China Firewall. And then there is the federal. Microsoft also has a federal set of regions. They are not shown here because you don't go through this portal. It's a similar portal, but you go through a different portal because of the regulations around those, right? So that's the region part of it. Any questions? Or then if you can just click that at the top and close that. After the region, the marketplace here is a key concept that we have. Everybody has a marketplace, and I will show you how, from a big data perspective, because the session is about big data, how it's really changed, and I think a differentiator for us. So if you just click on this marketplace, so that's our marketplace. There are different categories. These are more, I think, technology-specific capabilities. Going forward, you'll also see vertical-specific capabilities, right? Because first we build the underlying platform, get the ISVs like Cloudera, DataStax, etc. But then you go higher up the stack and start building services which are more vertical-specific. So the marketplace is quickly evolving, where you will see more vertical-specific things here. Now let's click on, since this is about data, let's click on like data plus storage or data plus analytics. So as you can see here, the first thing that you see here is in the marketplace. Again, we are not being preferential that, even though we have our own data store that's similar, this is what is called as the hero image. So when you come into the marketplace, you can promote yourself, maybe based on seasonality or different offers that we have, to be the hero image, right, in that category. So we will display that. So the first party services may be right at the bottom, what Microsoft offers, and we will display that. Now if you again go back to the I think was it data plus storage, let's try that. Where is Cloudera? So just scroll down.
Scroll down.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can scroll down. Sorry, I think it's in the other one then. The data plus analytics. Yeah, so just scroll all the way down.
There we go.
Yeah, right there. So again, what you can see here is you got Hortonworks and you got Cloudera, and we are actually working with Mapper as well. So even in terms of the Hadoop engines, and Kubol is also offered as a service. So if you look across the board, we have, let's say somebody wants to do the batch data analytics. You go to Azure, you have a choice. You have HD Insight, which is offered by Microsoft, it's a managed service. You have Kubol, which is, I think, being in the valley, you guys are familiar with that. It's a managed, Hadoop implementation. But then you also got Cloudera, Hortonworks, and Mapper all available and very, simple. So let's click on Cloudera just to see the experience of how do you instantiate. So typically, when somebody wants to set up a Hadoop cluster, and I'm sure some of you might have, it's really complex. It's really complex, and the way you do it is the vendor has some sort of a reference architecture, and there's a set of scripts, and you manually kind of try to set that up. Even the Amazon Cloud Formation does not have this capability of single click and provision a full-blown cluster, what we call as a multi-VM image. So when you click on Cloudera, the first thing, and Hortonworks, the first thing to notice is this is not a Microsoft image. This is owned by the vendor, and the vendor is offering that in the marketplace. Now, if you click on the create button at the bottom, They have put their lingo, the legalese, everything around there. Now you click the button at the bottom, what you'll see come up over there is you're giving parameters. So rather than running scripts and trying to set up a complex Cloudera cluster, you're actually, myself and Cloudera have sat together, their chief architect, and we have created a reference architecture that says, on Azure, for this type of a workload, this is our best recommended architecture. And we have boiled it down to a set of parameters. And when you enter the resource group name, which is a container that says, here's the set of machines, that's a Cloudera cluster, so you can operate on them atomically. You can then shut them down, you can delete, all of those things you can do. You can add more nodes. If you need to scale out, you can delete nodes if you need to scale back in. So the resource group is kind of that umbrella that enables you to do that elasticity within the cluster itself. You have cluster name, username, SSH key, enable high availability. When you click enable high availability for Cloudera, they have decided that they have the master node, right? So there is Cloudera manager and then there is a master node. If you say high availability, they'll make sure that there are 2 instances of them. So even if one goes down, your cluster can function. So those are all parameters that the vendor decides. Now there's a pricing tier. So for this particular evaluation cluster, Cloudera has decided that they wanted a D14 SKU within Azure. It's 16 physical cores, not hyper-threaded, 16 physical cores, 112 gigabytes of memory, as you can see there, and 32 data disks, 800 gigabytes of local SSD. So pretty big, machine. What you can see here is it's giving you the retail price for that machine right there. So as you build your cluster, throughout this new portal, the other thing, because in big data, you can quickly burn a lot of money. So we are giving you upfront, here's approximately what it will cost you to operate this kind of a cluster. And then you can make intelligent decisions when you're operating, when you're creating that cluster. Now once that's done, you can also go back, say add to start board, you can just click on the worker configuration. And here you can decide, how many worker nodes do we need. So currently we have tested for 3 to 30, because these are pretty large size machines, but we have the next plan is to test up to 100, because it's not that it will not work. Cloudera has to validate, and because they also support this particular configuration. So once you build this cluster in the cloud through this single click type of process, 30 minutes later, you got a fully functioning Cloudera cluster that you go to Cloudera Manager and start doing all the things that you want, right? Cloudera Manager, go to Navigator, start using Impala. All of those things are possible. So I want to just I'll answer. I just want to point out here, this is differentiated because nobody else offers that sort of a single click experience. And if you see about typically how it's done on-prem, even it's a long cycle just to get the right kind of hardware for this type of a machine. Get through provisioning, get through setting up the right configuration. Maybe hire one of the experts who comes, validates that is this all the right configuration. And we have baked it down with working with Cloudera to just a single click. About 30 minutes later, you got a fully functioning cluster. So yeah, then you had a question.
Yeah, good question.
Sure.
Does pricing actually include support as well, or is support separate?
This, what is shown here, is the price for the SSD SKU, because this version of Cloudera is free, right? Cloudera has 3 different versions. They have the basic, which is free. It's supposedly a more secure version of Hadoop. Then you have Flex, and which has Impala and HBase, and then you have the enterprise version, which is where they really make the money. 65% of the business is done in the enterprise scale. They are offering that, they haven't offered it yet, right? They wanted to first test the waters with how many downloads, etc. are happening. So this pricing right now is only because it's free. It's only the Azure infrastructure. Okay. But if they were to decide to do that, then we can offer where they could. There is a seller portal and a publishing portal for this. So what happens is the seller, in this case Cloudera or DataStax, they go in, sign up, and they say, I have 3 different types of SKUs. And here's the price I want to offer for a SKU on top of what Azure itself charges. Right? So you can bake that charge in, and then this portal will show you the price, which is the combined price. Yeah?
This is 24/7 on all the time.
This can be.
Is that how much it would cost them for a year if it was always on?
Yeah, exactly. So no, this is by the way per month, because this is a pretty high-end machine. But yes, that is exactly right. That if every month, if you just left it running all the time, but that's the beauty of this cluster, is because it's in the cloud and it's fully provisioned, and the resource group helps you manage everything as a unit. You can just say that, look, I've done whatever I need to do, I can shut down the entire cluster and your costs stop right there. Your billing stops right there because Azure is per minute billing.
Can you suspend it and restart it again so it's the same?
That's precisely the point, yeah.
Okay, that's right. That's very true.
Yeah, exactly. Because then,
So when you suspend it, the data is still there, right? So
yeah, exactly. So here's the thing. This is SSD, right? It's ephemeral on the box. If you shut down the cluster at that time, so that the billing stops, there are two modes of shutdown. One is where you shut down, but it's still allocated to you, and the billings continue. The other mode is where you shut down and the billing stops. So it's per minute billing, as I said. So the minute you stop, billing stops. In this case, if you have SSD, then obviously because it's on the box, it will be gone. But the technique that both I can speak to pretty much all the vendors, but generally what like DataStax is the most recent example. What they're saying is, look, we prefer to have an SSD because our workload prefers SSD. But then we take snapshots to Azure storage, which is that 2.4 cent, dirt cheap storage that I mentioned per month, right? So you take snapshots of that. So that's one approach. The approach that Cloudera has for one of the SKUs that's coming online next week, in fact, is where you have the SSD for cache and all of those, and then you have storage, which is an attached disk. So it's persistent. So now if you shut down the cluster, you bring it back up, your data is all there. Does that answer your question?
yeah.
Okay.
But you're still charged for the data storage. You're not charged for the compute cluster.
You charge for data, but here's the thing, right? You got 2.4 cents a month per gigabyte.
Yeah.
Right? And the other part of is fast storage. So you can say that give me, as we said over here, you can have up to 32 data disks, each 1 terabyte. So even though the storage on the box is 32 terabytes, you're only charged for what you have actually used. So if you store 100 gigabytes on it instead of 32 terabytes, you're only going to be charged for 100 gigabytes. So yeah, but storage cost will be there for storing that in an Azure data center or any cloud vendor for that matter.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand.
But think of the cost difference when you got this kind of cost per node for a month constantly on versus just the storage at 2.4 cents a gigabyte retail. Typically Microsoft does this thing called enterprise agreement where it's substantially discounted. One of the policy that we have on storage just since that came up is Microsoft has a public policy that says that we will match Amazon's price on the commodity. So if Amazon drops storage, then we will immediately match that price. So people, because sometimes they fear, oh wait, I've signed an enterprise agreement and you gave me this price, but what if Amazon drops the price 1 year later or 6 months later? Not a problem. There's a public policy that states we will always match that price. And what happened interestingly, I think last year, about 8+ months ago, was Google actually dropped their prices storage, raised to the bottom. Amazon had a big discussion internally because I have some friends, so then they decided that they will match Google's price, and then immediately next day Microsoft said that because we match Amazon, so all 3 cloud vendors ended up
So,
go ahead.
so this is the price per machine, right?
This is the price per node.
Per
Yes.
node for a month.
For a month for this kind of high-end node. There are other nodes that you have as well. Like let's say this is a D14 standard, but you can go to a D3 or a D4 which has 4 cores, because you may not need always. Remember, these are like very high-end Intel, latest and greatest CPUs. You may not need 16 physical cores for the kind of workload you have. So you can go down to a D3 where you got 4 of those cores, and then you can have the rest of the stuff in storage like you do there.
So what exactly is the D14? Is that sort of a Intel core or a Cloudera core or?
No, D14, this is a SKU, like in Amazon also you have the different SKUs, right? I can show you the...
Okay, so
this is just the compute node that we offer.
Okay, just cryptically called D14.
Yeah, they have this naming convention where there is A series, then they skip to and say D series, and then they have the G series. And if you can just, let's just quickly... So if you
Can you do the view all will show up?
Not in this case, because Cloudera has decided this is the only one they want to offer for this SKU. But if you just go to azure.com in the browser, no, just in the another instance of the browser, if you just go to azure.com, and go to pricing on the top over there, pricing. And then just scroll down. Scroll down and go to virtual machine, Linux virtual machines. Sorry, right. No, yeah, there. And scroll down again, sorry. And pick, go up. I want to show the G series as well. So instead of central US, can you scroll down the central US drop down and pick, let's say, East 2, US East 2. Yeah. So this is the everything I'm showing. Like I said, I always make sure that I show what is public, not some magic that I have, right? So this is Azure.com pretty much has everything. You go to pricing, there's a calculator. But now if you can see, this is the basic tier, A0 to A4. This is the SKUs, 18 cents an hour, all the way up to like 35. Sorry, not even 18, 0.1 cents, 35 cents an hour. So that's the basic tier. Now if you start scrolling down, the A's can be AMD or Intel. Because for a long time, the Azure data centers I had optimized for Intel economies of scale. But now we have many Intel. So in the A series, you can either get AMD or Intel. And some software is sensitive to that. So for example, Cloudera, right? Cloudera has Intel invested $740 million in Cloudera about a year ago. They don't want to use an AMD processor. So they only standardize on the D series. So then if you start scrolling down, this is the D series. So that's the configuration, right? How much RAM, disk size, SSD, and what the price is. And this is all retail pricing, as I said. And then if you scroll further down, then you get this G series, which we call as the Godzilla SKU. So if you can see the last one, right? G5, it's got 32 physical cores, almost half a terabyte of RAM, and then 6 terabytes of SSD, and then the 64 terabytes of the sparse storage. So those are pretty, you can go all the way, right, from an A0 all the way to a G5, we offer all the SKUs. And why it matters is, again, from a big data perspective, since the talk is about big data, if you want the scale-up model, which is what typically the classic relational engines are, you got a SKU for that. SAP is also doing a lot of things to offer on Azure. Those are the type of SKUs that they are considering. But then for the scale-out, you don't need a G5 because the price performance doesn't really work out. So everything boils down to, what is my price of operating my cluster. So while we provide all these advantages, the vendors have to be very selective on which SKU they want. So one option is to say, okay, I'll let it be on the end user, and they can pick a G5. But then they're shocked because of the price tag that they see. So the vendor makes some conscious choices. One of the approaches we have been taking is DataStax, Cloudera, Mongo, every one of them in offering t-shirt sizes. So you have a POC cluster, which is the free version of the software. Then you have the small, medium, large kind of thing, right, and extra large. So all the decisions are made for you. You create a small, or you create a, upfront what the price point is, and then you buy into that and operate your cluster. So any questions? Yeah.
Sir, what if the customer requires a Windows Server as a VM in Azure? How will the licensing be handled?
Oh, Windows Server? That's a good question. So if you go back again to the portal view, you can shut this down. Yeah, just shut all these guys. So Windows Server, in the marketplace there is different types of Windows Server images. So you have Windows Server by itself, plain vanilla, 2012 R2. You got, if you again go to the plus, yeah, there as well. So just go to virtual machines and see there, you can see Windows Server, right? And you get the same experience. You have Ubuntu, you have Core OS. So pretty much every vendor. Red Hat is not there yet, but some announcements coming. So when you use that, you have two choices. One is the price is dipped into the Windows Server. So remember how I went to show me virtual machines and Linux virtual machines? Because Linux is free, so there the price. If you go to the Windows Server, you have the option of per hour billing, where you say that, look, I'm going to click that cluster, that image right now, and Microsoft will charge you on a per hour, and actually per minute in that sense, right? So the moment you stop, the price of the machine includes the Windows Server license as well as the price of that machine for, let's say, a Linux machine. But then you have BYOL, which is bring your own license. So if in an enterprise you already have purchased Windows Server, then you can take that license and bring it here as well. And same thing for SQL Server, SharePoint Server, right? So that's again pretty powerful that you can currently have BYOL, bring your own license, or you click an image like that and pick the price where the price of the license is break into the price of the compute, storage, etc. We are going to light up very soon monthly and annual billing as well, because sometimes what happens is you don't want to deal with the per hour. It's okay for smaller scenarios. For larger scenarios, you say, okay, I don't want to have the bring your own license model, but I do want to have an hourly. I don't want to go and use a credit card and charge every month. Right? It's just nasty. So we have all of those models in the marketplace. The last two, just to be clear, are not yet lighted up. They will be shortly. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
How about on the flip side, if it's, how do you handle it in Amazon side? Like for example, there's a cloud in Amazon.
Yeah.
And there's a server there. So is it like bring your own license as well to use in the...
My understanding is yes, you can do that in Amazon as well. That you can have, like if you have a Windows server, then yeah. They have to offer it, think about it. If you don't offer, as a cloud vendor, if you don't offer that, I'm not sure about Google, because I don't think Google up until now was even offering Windows Server. But I know that it's either coming shortly or it was announced. I don't know if any of you are aware, but they are going to offer that as well. But I think, see, at the commodity level, honestly, you don't make money. As a cloud vendor, you don't make money. So yes, you can, you have to offer all these basics. Like I'm going to give you Windows Server with the license baked in. I'm going to give you, the Red Hat with the license. So all of those are in many ways commodity. Where you make the money is when you go start higher up the stack. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about data gravity.
Yeah.
Talk briefly about that process of if someone is moving from on-prem to the cloud, what are some of the scenarios in terms of how they backfill and bring that cloud environment up if they already have a major investment in an on-premise system?
So in fact, I was going to cover that probably a little late, but let me go. Actually, so one of the things I showed you was the single click, right? That's a differentiator for us. The footprint of the region, that's a differentiator for us because of the Azure investment. But then what happens is typically you saw the green dots. But what about Africa? What about India? Right now there is no cloud data Azure region over there. What do you do? So what Microsoft, in fact, is all of our investment is in the enterprise. Right? Microsoft has a heavy investment in the enterprise. You cannot leave that behind and say there is a different model here and different model here. So we have something called Windows Azure Pack. And Windows Azure Pack is a free download that you put on top of Windows Server. And what it does is it effectively provides, and I will be showing you what powers that Cloudera template, what powers that DataStax template. But Windows Azure Pack effectively is providing that same infrastructure as a service model that you have in the Azure region on-prem. And we also have 21 partners worldwide, including, let's say, Dimension Data, etc., who operate their own data centers. So they can take Windows Azure Pack and they have a tie-up with Microsoft where they will offer it in the areas where you didn't see the green. So what advantage we have is you have the same consistent model, we call it cloud consistency. So you have the same consistent model between how you deploy and operate on Azure, how you deploy and operate your service in the partner operated data center, and then how you deploy and operate in your own data center with Windows Azure Pack slapped on it. Also the portal is the same. So you don't have to learn a different model for when I'm logged into the Azure region and my service is running in the Azure West or US East or US West or Western Europe, and then there is some component of my service on-prem. So that's my kind of first comment to in response to your question. The second thing is, but wait, you want to operate them maybe like for burst scenario where you have something on-prem as you said, and then for certain additional capacity you need to burst to the cloud when you have that spike.
Or move it.
Yeah, or even move it, right? So both of those are possible because of the underlying technology which I'll be showing you. But if you see again from the end operator's perspective, it's the same portal, just like we have those Azure regions now. You'll be able to add your own, whether it is that Azure Pack which you have on there or the the third party. Now one other caveat is that it's not obviously not going to be the same SLA. Because when Microsoft's operating our service, we are giving an SLA like we'll have three nines of connectivity for that service. And if that we cannot meet that connectivity, we actually get money, you will get money back, right? Because Microsoft missed that SLA. That will obviously, the partner will decide how they want to operate their service, and on-prem obviously it's again yours. So that's the only caveat. The model is the same, the service level agreements will be different because when we operate our service, we have an assurance, we give an assurance that this is the, so those are also all publicly listed in Azure.com. Okay, any questions? Yeah, sure.
You mentioned cloud connectivity.
Yeah.
How exactly do you make that happen? Is it just an FELS link, IPC link? How exactly?
So there are different options. Again, if you can go to the browser. So one is where you can go over the public internet, right? And you can set up, there is the concept of a network like any cloud vendor has, and you put your machines in a network.
Even in the browser.
Yeah, and go to, I think, documentation, just the documentation link next to pricing. And if you go to networking at the bottom, yeah. So yeah, just keep that there. So there is this concept of a virtual network, right? No, you just go to the screen that was there.
Documentation.
Yeah, no worries. Documentation, yeah, right there.
Networking.
Networking. Yeah. So virtual network is what you would expect, that you basically define a network, you say here's my network, subnets, and within that you can say that this is on-prem, so you can have site to, what do you call it, from the Azure data center to your own site, you can have between Azure regions like two services and you can connect them in the network, so that's one option. And you can go over public internet. The second thing is called Express Route, and if you click on that, sorry, if you click on Express Route, and just scroll down a little bit. This is a fat pipe essentially. And again, Amazon has this as well. So if you just click like introduction to Express Route. So Amazon has this, I'm not sure Google has this, but effectively it's a fat pipe where you have, either your provider, the telecom provider, AT&T, in UK it's British Telecom, right? They'll provide that fat connectivity between your data center and Azure. Now remember again over there, when you have these kinds of things where you're connecting across regions or across your data center and the Azure data center, one thing to be cognizant of is, remember I said, we love to have your data, right? Please send me your data as much as, but then when you're trying to take your data out, we do charge. So, and everybody does. So you have to be very cognizant of the fact that you cannot move large amounts of data from, cloud data center into your own premises because it's going to cost you. I'll have to look. I mean, it's all on the pricing. Like if you go to the pricing tag, it will tell you exactly, all of the details.
Zero ingress.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Because of that concept of data gravity, and everybody, I'm just saying that everybody does it. And when you architect these solutions in the cloud, especially the big data solution, you have to be very cognizant because your cost can quickly go up just by choosing a compute node where maybe when you got 16 physical cores of the high-end Intel processor, there's not a lot of workloads that can exercise that, right? So what if you're only using 8 cores? So you have to, when you architect these big data solutions in the cloud, irrespective of whichever the cloud platform is, you have to be very, very cognizant of cost, which is why, as I showed you in our portal, we're building cost into every single aspect. There's a billing thing right there, right? So at any click now on the left bar, the leftmost bar.
Yeah, okay.
So we have made sure that because this impacts people, our whole portal has built billing into the very fabric of that experience because you want to know about it at every single point. Each of those, yes, go ahead, and then we will go into the underlying technology because I just want to show how simple that it is to actually define these images, and you all can try it out as well.
So what about monitoring? I mean, do
Yeah.
you have any monitoring tools?
Yeah, so again, monitoring, we're taking the same approach. So Azure has certain things, Microsoft, let's say, has System Center, right? So Azure is building that service, which will offer the monitoring and, the GRC, there's a GRC package on it, right? Governance, risk, compliance. So all of those is there. But the whole idea, as you saw in this case with the big data space, is we offer third parties who will also provide that experience. So Azure is not limiting itself to only first party, okay, if we offer or we don't offer. We are saying, hey, third parties, come play here. because we have the strength in the enterprise. That's where the money is. If you play on our platform, we have 40,000 people across the Microsoft field sales that are going to promote your product. So that's kind of our value proposition as well.
So is monitoring based on a vendor, or do you have a collected dashboard that shows all the vendors together? So if I have like 3 vendors on Azure, do I have to use 3 different tools to monitor?
No. That's the thing, right? Like let's say you use System Center. Once you use a product like System Center, it doesn't care anymore about the fact that this is a Cloudera workload and this is a RabbitMQ and this is my website based on PHP. It doesn't care anymore. For it, it's just a cluster that you would have on-prem that you need to monitor and monitor as a whole. So you need to monitor from a single pane of glass your entire solution, which could be comprised of all those different resource groups that I told you about, right?
Okay.
So we give you the atomicity of saying that look, my Cloudera is one resource group and I manage it that way because, like I said, the costs add up and you want to quickly shut down a cluster. You don't want to go through 100 virtual machines to try to shut them down. That's just inoptimal. But if you say that, hey, this is my resource group, I want to tear down my resource group, it will do it very quickly. But that may be that portion. But the rest of your solution, the website portion of it may still be going strong. You don't want to shut it down because there's traffic coming in, right? So because of the resource group concept, we give you those options of having atomic control over it. But from a monitoring perspective, it doesn't matter because it's just a cluster of different types of workloads brought together to build a solution, and you need to monitor as a whole from one pane of glass. Yeah?
That's a great question. So do you offer monitoring only in the cloud, or is the in-premise?
It's on-prem, yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Every Microsoft product, unlike the competition, we are making a very conscious decision that there is a cloud play, a hybrid play in each one of them. So for example, System Center. System Center manages from one pane of glass. What I showed you is coming in this portal, manages the on-prem, but then you can have instances which are burst to the cloud, or you have a second instance that's running in the cloud. You monitor that again from within System Center Operations Manager. Right? Same thing with SQL Server. One of the things that's very difficult is disaster recovery. You need to, I used to be an architect for these mission critical systems, and many of these would come and say, hey, we want a DR story. It's like, okay. And then we would put together the thing, and once they look at the price tag, they're like, yeah, you know what, maybe I don't need 5 nines, right? I think I'm okay with 3 nines. and really, I mean, this happens, every time. But the thing about the cloud, and again, this is nothing to do with specifically Microsoft Cloud. The thing about the cloud is it offers you a DR story at very cheap price. So for example, as I said earlier, the Azure storage, by default it's making 3 copies in a region that we are responsible for. And if for some reason we are not able to give that copy, there's an SLA, we give money back. Optionally, you can make another 3 copies in a paired region, like US West. So if there is a disaster on this side of the US, you have that data available asynchronously replicated across the region, right? So you have 3 copies over there that you can go access. So that's at the core storage level. Now if you start moving up the stack, what we are effectively saying is by allowing something like System Center to manage both this and that, by allowing SQL Server to store replicas in Azure in addition to what's in your on-prem, every single product we are building in that resiliency about the hybrid. So your cost of a DR type of solution significantly goes down. Okay? Now last thing I want to show is how easy it is. So if you just again go to the browser and go to github.com. So again, this is all in GitHub, not in some Microsoft repo. And Azure RM templates. Azure RM templates. So again, a public site, and click on that. So you guys are probably familiar with CloudFormation. How many of you are familiar with CloudFormation? It's effectively, not using the API approach, etc., but actually using JSON to define your configuration, right? What is the configuration of my cluster, whether it's a Cloudera cluster or a Cloudera cluster composed with a machine learning, cluster. What we have done here is we have made on GitHub a set of public templates that Microsoft and the vendor have worked with to provide. That through a single click, again, you saw the marketplace experience. The marketplace, there is no magic. Marketplace is just a portal that is making REST API calls. So if you put Fiddler or some other thing in between, you know exactly the calls it's making, and you can make those exact same calls. So while we provide that rich portal, we are not doing anything special there. We are making the same API calls that anybody else can make to get that piece of information. Underneath the covers, what the marketplace is doing is when I click on a Cloudera cluster or a DataStax cluster, it's going to go and fire off in the background one of these templates that the vendor and us have worked together to create that reference architecture that I said, right? So let's take a look at one of them. So if you can scroll down, I don't know, Elasticsearch, there is Elasticsearch, there's Mongo. So just scroll down a bit. There's CoreOS, Chocolatey, and just keep on. There is Ubuntu, Kafka on Ubuntu. So just pick like Elasticsearch. You want to set up an Elasticsearch cluster on Ubuntu. See that deploy to Azure. So those are the files. Again, you can take a look at it. It's JSON. So click on maybe like the Azure deploy.json. It's effectively defining a schema and different parameters that you take. The parameters could be how many nodes you want in the cluster. The parameter could be how do you configure the operating system in a particular way, right? All of those can be parameters. There's no limit to how many parameters you can have. And then you can say, okay, here's my password, storage account, etc. Which region I want to, by default, provide as the region. You can always select more regions, but which. So then if you keep on define your virtual network, you define your storage, you define your SKUs, and if you continue scrolling down, effectively you're defining your cluster as a JSON template. Now there is tooling around it, so you don't have to actually go and, if you want, you can always do that, but there is tooling which will let you kind of say, okay, I want a D14, and it will create behind the scenes the JSON template for. So we're making it very visual to create these clusters and not have to do like scripts. Even though if you want, you can do the scripts as well. There's nobody preventing you from, because it's a REST call, and we have language specific wrappers for pretty much every language you want. Now, if you go all the way down to the bottom, sorry, those are load balancing rules. So you can say that if you have a cluster, in this case Elasticsearch, right? You have a set of nodes. You want to balance your traffic across those. So you can define different rules for the Microsoft load balancer, right? Again from the JSON script. What I wanted to see was maybe a little these are ports that you can open on the boxes, and just scroll up a little bit. Someplace where there is a net. Sorry, right there, the command to execute. So what happens is once the cluster is fully provisioned, you can tell it exactly which command line to initiate on the box, so that it starts provisioning, the Elasticsearch in this case, or a Cloudera, or DataStax, or whatever else, right? MemSQL, Mongo. So again, the vendor controls this. This is their script. And if you didn't want to have a bash script, you could use Puppet, you could use Chef. Pratik is trying Vagrant, and we found a particular bug, but you got your flavor. Whatever scripts you do to provision on-prem, those same scripts will work here as well. Because remember, all that Azure Resource Manager has done, which is technology vendor, is just wired up a cluster for you with the specification that you said. Here's my network, compute, X number of nodes, this type of a node in this region. After that, it does this command to execute, and it will launch it on the box and run that command. So you decide how you want. You can add parameters, etc. Yeah, Pratik.
So how do we push this JSON file, or do we use Azure CLI, or?
Yeah, so you can use Azure CLI, which is based on Node.js,
right.
Or you can use PowerShell, and it's a REST API call that says, literally, like when I was testing this, we use Postman on Google.
Oh.
Because many
but
people
then how do you,
that that's the simplest way to fire REST calls.
How do you submit the script files that you want to execute?
Yeah, exactly. What?
How do you submit the script files that you want to execute once the cluster is up? So like in this one, command to execute, you're executing a script file.
Yeah. The script file is typically, so there are multiple options. One is you can have the script file in the same directory as where the JSON script is. The other option, like we've done for Cloudera, etc., we don't want to take that. So we keep it in Azure storage in a central location, and you can get a URL to the storage, which is in their subscription, and it picks it up from there and then fires it off on the box.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So there are multiple options how you could do it.
Thank you.
Kind of touched on some quick question then.
Sure.
What about, maybe slightly off topic, but you're talking about sort of a prototype or development environment.
Yeah.
Where you're not working with one of the vendors that you outlined in your first slide. How does from executables then would follow something similar? If you're doing, say, a prototype eval of some new code, a new product, a new vendor who's not part of the Azure family, you're doing it in development, obviously, not in production. How does that scenario work?
So it is yours, you said, not the vendors, right? So you
Or
downloaded
a vendor that's
So most of the vendors, like I said earlier, first of all, they offer a POC environment. So for example, there is if you go to that GitHub repo, there is a DataStax 3-node POC cluster. You click that, you'll get a 3-node where you can start using DataStax right away, Cassandra, effectively.
And then from another vendor, maybe it's a development tool or something like that.
Yeah, so every vendor offers some sort of a free model where you can go, there is either a sandbox, you saw that, right? There is a sandbox from each of the vendors. Cloudera has a sandbox, DataStax has a sandbox, MemSQL we're working with, Aerospike, Mongo. So you can get the sandbox, you can do. Typically sandbox is for very initial things. Then you say, okay, I want a decent 3-node cluster to kind of really get the scale out thing working, functionality working. You can fire off a 3 or 5-node cluster real easy. You don't have to have the vendor's implementation for that. Because what I showed you over there is not necessarily all of it is vendor. There are others who have built their own and put it up there and GitHub as well.
I'm just thinking more along the lines of maybe another utility that needs to be resident in the environment.
Okay, yeah. So then what happens is you build, this is a utility, you build and you take your Linux flavor that you want, you put the utility on top of it, you can take a snapshot of it, and then you basically sanitize it by saying deprovision, there's the command, and you effectively remove all the user specific data, right? And then you publish that image to Azure, and then in your storage subscription or in the marketplace. If you go to the marketplace, then you are basically saying that, look, I am a publisher, and you get information like how many people have downloaded. So there's a lot of interesting analytics you can get through this mechanism, because now we give you information on who is using it, for how long, all those type of things. But if you didn't want to go through that, you can create your own image, you can publish it, and then use it for POC or this kind of thing. Okay? So again, yeah.
I have a question on how to convince, let's say I have a customer who's ready to move her servers into the cloud. She's saying, do it to me, and say, do it on Amazon. And then I would say, what can I say to say, why don't you try Azure? What's the best way to answer that? Why would I choose Azure?
Why Azure? Okay. Yeah, it's always tough when you're not the incumbent. Some of the things that I pointed out earlier, right? That number one, the hybrid story, Microsoft has the best. For on-prem, like I said, the same experience, even Amazon does not afford to have that. The per minute billing, if you start looking at it from a pricing perspective, the fact that we match the storage price, and as you move up the stack, per minute billing, it makes a huge difference for many of the scenarios that you typically initially go to the cloud for. Burst, or processing born in the cloud, data in the cloud, but also married to hybrid, which is already running on-prem, right? Running 2 clusters, one for born in the cloud data, one for what is already on-prem, and then taking the results of that and marrying it together. That's another kind of scenario. So again, based on the scenario, like I said, the fact that we offer that hybrid experience, DR is another good scenario where the cost comes down. Those would be things that we try. In terms of what our group is very much focused and has credibility because our CVP is a technical fellow at Microsoft, John Schucher, and he strongly encourages hands-on. So we can get into endless debates about, why should I try Microsoft? I always say, look, just try it. 2 days, all it takes, 2 days, 3 days. Once you see it, and what I just showed you, right? Like, go to the GitHub repository, it's public. If they try it, they'll see, how powerful it is. But otherwise, it's very difficult to convince, especially the people who write the check. Now, another so that's one thing. The other thing that we're finding out is a differentiator for Microsoft is, remember, Microsoft already has a business with these enterprises. Pretty much just like Oracle and IBM, they have an enterprise agreement with Microsoft. There's a lot of Azure dollars which are locked in those enterprise agreements that those guys don't know what do I do with it. And so, another approach that I have been again successful with was to actually go and tell them, look, I can help you unlock those dollars. And then they go and try a few things. I'll give you an example. ICICI Bank, since I was in India, right? ICICI guy, the insurance, but not the bank, but the insurance group, their head of operations had come to Redmond to meet me recently, and he was telling me, oh wait, remember when you guys were there and you had baked in that Azure dollars in there? For a long time we were thinking, how do we use this? And then he said, look, he had a DevOps project that he wanted to try a few things with container. He said, I just said, hey, why don't you give me that subscription? And he put out the DevOps scenario in the cloud, and it worked out very well for him. It used up the dollars which probably otherwise they would not have used up, and he got a taste for what it is. So right now, all of his implementation is Azure. He's not going anywhere else. He's like, okay, now I got it. So to me, that's a important advantage that Microsoft has. Is there's a lot of those type of things where the salespeople at Microsoft has sold it part of the enterprise agreement, and most of them for exactly the same reason, right? You don't blame them. They don't know what Azure is, what Azure can do. They don't even know that it can run these Linux workloads. Typically, when they have a conversation with, I'm amazed at how many end customers and very brand name customers are coming, to us and saying, "Oh my God, you have Cloudera on Azure." I saw Satya and Mike Olson and Scott Guthrie make their strategic announcement. When can I get it? But the Microsoft field people, they don't even talk to them about Cloudera because they're like, "Wait, you don't even understand this space. What am I going to talk to you about?" So it makes a huge difference when they actually start seeing some of this rather than debate about, okay, yeah, Amazon is great, and people who are there, I don't think, even I wouldn't possibly advise them to move, right? Because they've got a successful thing running there. But then there are many scenarios in these enterprises, including the examples that I just told you about, where they said, okay, for this scenario, let me try Azure, and it worked great for them.
So in that line of questioning too, let's say I was able to convince, I'll try Azure. Do you have tools to migrate some of my servers from Amazon to Azure?
Yes. So we actually have the tools as well. In fact, there are businesses that have been formed now just on that model. And again, a lot of it depends on the workload, right? Because what is your workload? So if you have a service product, then it's a different game. Let's say Mongo. Unless Mongo Lab, which offers as a service for Mongo DB on Azure, you need to have them on Azure as well. So in this case they do, and then you just go talk to Will Schulman, and he should be able to switch your subscription over to Azure. So that's the service as a service component. For in your subscription, which is the machines are in my subscription, and I'm paying for those machines, not paying for the entire service, there again it's if you can again just go to the azure.com, there's a thing at the top, free, sign up for free, just like other cloud vendors do. So you go in there, $200 for the first month, you can get started, right? And using this public template. So if you just go to like the free trial over there at the top, and you can start, try it now, 1 month, $200, and for individuals. For enterprises, we typically have this bespoke program, and we give them up to $500 worth of Azure per month. In fact, a couple of months ago at YC, our CVP, we had a partnership where we offered a bundle. We gave them, I think it's on TechCrunch, so I don't remember the exact number, but it's like a decent amount of Azure dollars, for every startup that is through the YC, the Y Combinator. And then you also have a DataStax and one other product bundled as part of it. So it's becoming pretty attractive for even, I mean, we haven't focused on the startups because our business is primarily on the enterprise, but it's becoming pretty attractive for them as well. Because now what's happening, like I said, is as soon as you start landing these workloads on Azure, and when Cloudera or a DataStax Salesforce is saying, I want to partner with you to be successful in Azure, it's apparently working. And I'm saying it because I'm in the front line of that.
One question, do you have a table that actually lists the differences between why I should go with Azure compared to AWS? And one was asking me, I mean, if I have a customer, I would like to know why. Maybe your security, your infrastructure.
Yeah. See, no, you're right, and it should be, but here's the problem, right? From the commodity perspective, as I said earlier, if you let's say compute and storage and network and the VPN, it's really every major cloud vendor has to offer it. There's no differentiation there. There's really no differentiation. So you can always get into this debate, but wait, mine's X amount of. Like I said, we changed the game where okay, the moment you drop your price on commodity, I'm going to match it. It's very tough from a commodity perspective.
You can't win there. Right?
Yeah, nobody can win there. So the question then becomes, if I look, and that's why I showed you the Azure Data Factory and how you manage the entire life cycle of data. The question comes up with, what's your, how are you looking at it as a holistic up the stack and bringing it all together? And that's where, like I said, our differentiation is enterprise on-prem or in the cloud, managing through the same portal, deploying through the same model. Amazon does not have that. Now think about Cloudera, the template that they have put, and this is not me saying it, just an example. Yesterday I was with Databricks, right, the enterprise Spark company. It was interesting that Databricks didn't want to talk to Microsoft because they're like, we don't know exactly the same, we don't know what to do. But yesterday they spent an entire afternoon with me and a couple of my colleagues, and they had their 3 best guys at the table. They said, we intentionally, and there were many reasons, but part of it was they said, we talked to DataStax because DataStax has a strategic agreement with Databricks. And they said, these guys, you should give them time. So it's not going to be, oh wait, I offer this service and that service because Amazon comes and says, oh wait, we offer that and we offer that better. Or Google will come and say, we offer that, we offer. It's an argument that you don't want to get into and you will not win. So that's our approach, and we are identifying where the money is, and that clearly is in the enterprise. Yeah. So again, I guess with that I'll conclude unless there are any other questions. Thank you again for the opportunity, and my email and Twitter is listed. Feel free to shoot questions, ask anything. I'm more than happy to either answer myself or pull in others who can answer. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. So on behalf of the meetup group and also our sponsor Dataguise for the event, and I'd like to give our standard gift, which is called the security blanket.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
And we also have an offer from our event sponsor here. So if you want to explore all these wonderful wall displays and technologies, there's a little tour that we can go through, and Manoj, who's sitting over there, will be happy to take you guys around to show that. And we highly recommend it. Everyone who's seen it so far has been really
it was very
amazed by that. So thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. All right?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
hi. So I think, your question, right? I mean, my question.